Tell me if you've heard this one before. A long-running franchise decides to appeal to a more broader audience, and in return, loses its core identity and many of the aspects that the core audience loved in the first place and is what got them to play the game to begin with. Because guess what? It looks like Monster Hunter is the newest franchise to be added to that list. Because after spending around 58 hours in the wilds and killing Tempered Arkvelt about 20 different times now, I gotta say that while I don't think Wilds is a bad game by any means, it is certainly a step in the wrong direction, and is a downgrade in many aspects other than the combat, which is basically the only praise I do have for this game. And while I also feel like the entire hunting aspect has been completely gutted from this franchise. So while I do think Wilds has the potential to be a great game, and potentially maybe even one of the best titles in the franchise, it does need a lot of work to get there, and hopefully after watching this review, it might also help you decide if this game is currently worth $70 goddamn dollars or not. This is also going to be one of the few reviews I've done where I think I'm actually going to talk about the story section first, because there really isn't that much to say about it, and I would rather get it the fuck out of the way as soon as possible. So without wasting any more time, this is Baljeet Hunter Wilds. So the main reason I want to start with the story and get it out of the way real quick is because, simply put, it is forgettable as fuck. And if you put a gun to the back of my head right now and asked me to give you a quick synopsis of the plot, then let's just say me and JFK would have a lot in common right about now. And it has to be one of the most forgettable plots out of any goddamn game I have played in probably the past 5 years at least. And even though it's only about 10 to 15 hours long, I just found that to be 10 to 15 hours of boredom and bullshit, ultimately just getting in the way of me hunting monsters, because I don't know about you, I don't buy Monster Hunter games to have a cinematic story experience, but rather to hunt big motherfucking monsters so I can carve their corpse and make armor sets out of them. That's it. Especially when several hours of those stories are God of War style slow forced walking sections where you have to follow an NPC at a fucking snail's pace until you go from point A to point B in a Monster Hunter game.
This sucks. This sucks more than anything that has ever sucked before.
Again, I cannot express to you how little I give a fuck about this. And while I have heard that some people do appreciate the attempt to add some extra lore bits to Monster Hunter, while I do agree that this could probably be done in an interesting manner, this was sure as fuck not the way to go about it. And even though I did really enjoy Monster Hunter World, it also had a few of these slow walking segments, and it was also one of the first few Monster Hunter games to kind of make an attempt at a story mode. And while it also suffered from a few of these issues, it was to way lesser of a degree, and I feel like Worlds did it in a way better way, where the majority of the story sections were merely look for this monster, track the monster, fight the monster, and then you get a cool little cutscene when you find the monster, and then you get a cool little cutscene after you kill it. That's it. That's all you need. The more of these slow walking cinematic sections you add, the less I give a fuck. And this is not why I play Monster Hunter. The same way I don't play Final Fantasy to have a generic hack and slash DMC clone.
Kick that shitty ass game of the plane!
Sir, please you need to stop. There are children.
But to just give you a quick synopsis of what the plot is, the hunters basically stumble upon these new undiscovered lands, and in the process of doing that, they meet this young Jeet boy named Nada, who speaks to you and your crew about a monster called the White Wraith, which ultimately winds up being the nude cover monster for this game, Arkvelt, and there you go. That's about all you need to know, or at the very least, that's all you're gonna get from me, because that's all I could possibly be bothered to remember from that 10 to 15 hour slog until I was finally able to get to the entire reason I bought this game in the first place. Another issue I have with this story is I feel like it also completely counteracts this entire new open world that they decided to implement, and I will go a bit more in depth about the open world in the gameplay section, but what I mean by this is that Wild, for the first time in Monster Hunter history, introduces a new seamless open world where you can go straight from camp to hunting monsters on the big map without any loading screens. And because of this, you would think that the developers would want the player to explore more, to roam out into this open world more. But guess what? It doesn't whatsoever. And basically the only reason you'll ever be wandering out into the open world is whenever you happen to need some honey to make some potions or some other supplies to craft some shit for your hunts. Because other than that, or maybe to fish, there is basically zero reason to explore, especially once you set up all your little camps that you need to. And the story does a good job of highlighting this, because for your entire first 10 to 15 hours, you know, your introduction to this game while you're playing the story directly streamlines you from point A to point B, where you follow the NPCs to go hunt one monster from another monster, to one cutscene to another cutscene, meaning that again, for your first 10 to 15 hours of playing this game, you will basically be doing zero exploration in the open world, which means that by the time you finally do gain free access, it probably won't even be on your top 10 list of things to do, because the game up until that point has given you practically zero reason to actually explore the open world. And again, like I said earlier, there pretty much is no reason other than setting up camps and to go out every once in a while when you need supplies. And really the last thing regarding the story I want to talk about is the characters. And frankly, the reason I called this game Jeet Hunter is because the majority of this game's character cast is browner than the game's color palette.
Yeah. If you wanna go, then you go to hill and go down.
Why you get fried,
Yeah,
man?
why? Are you crazy?
You're fucking
You are
paranoid,
fucking,
man.
you are fucking.
And more importantly than that, the character designs themselves give me the fucking ack, and a good half of them look like Fallout mutants.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
And I would also go as far as to say that this is a good example of how far Japan has caved to the West, considering that Japanese games are almost damn near known for their super attractive characters. Because other than your own created character, you have Nada, who basically looks like Baljeet from Phineas and Ferb, and is just this annoying ass little Indian kid, and really does nothing but bitch and complain the entire fucking game, and nitpick you on your actions. And you might say, oh, well, it's because he's a kid. Okay, well, then why even put him in the fucking game? At least someone like, I don't know, Ellie, is supposed to provide some more emotional attachment to the story. Meanwhile, all this little piece of shit does is be obnoxious, and you could have replaced him with anybody that's not a little kid, and it probably would have helped made the story a little more tolerable.
She is, but she is different now.
Different how? Did she turn into a werewolf or something?
Now she is a nigger.
There's Olivia, who's some hag who looks like she may or may not have a cock, and has shoulders as broad as Michelle Obama.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
There's Eric, who is like an actual troon and even voiced by a non-binary person. Although, one piece of good news, according to my calculations, there is a 41% chance that we will not be seeing Eric in another Monster Hunter game. There's Alma, the new handler, who basically just looks like Jewish Mia Khalifa with a snoz to match. I could have swore I caught her trying to steal some of my monster drops at one point. But speaking of the handler real quick, I will say I do think it's pretty cool how the handler actually follows you around during the hunts now. At least it actually feels like they're doing something other than just sitting on their ass at camp the whole time going, "We did it, partner!" Like, we? We? Bitch, there is no we.
Who's we? There is no we.
And last but not least, we have, of course, the actual attractive figurehead for this game, Gemma, who's also the blacksmith for this game, so you'll be going to her quite frequently to make your armor and weapons. But guys, please, just like how Kingdom Come 2 had big tits, can you not let one attractive woman distract you from all the other mutants in this game? Please, can you control your gooning for 5 minutes and not let Booba distract you from the goal here? And in addition to the rancid character designs, Capcom has also made sure to include the typical body type A and B in the character customization menu instead of just male and female, since untreated mental illness seems to be at an all-time high. And in addition to that, you can now also equip male or female armor sets to any character, no matter their gender, meaning you'll now have a bunch of people running around looking like drag queens or HRT zombies. Ack! And really, there you go. That's really all I have to say about the story mode. It fucking sucks, it's unnecessary, and you should probably make the long, unnecessary walking segments skippable for future players, and take this as a lesson for future Monster Hunters to find a better way to add lore to the universe without forcing your player to essentially go through a 10 to 15 hour Sony movie game experience just to get to the part that they actually want to play and actually spent $70 on to begin with. And as I'll talk about in the gameplay section, what makes this even worse is that by the time you finally do get finished with the story and get to the actual gameplay section you've been waiting for, there is really not that much more content waiting for you. So let's go ahead and get into the gameplay section, because there will definitely be some pros and cons here. And just for reference, whenever I do make comparisons to another Monster Hunter, I'll be trying to keep my comparisons to Monster Hunter World only, since Wilds is basically supposed to be a direct sequel to Worlds. It's also been several years since I've played any of the older games. And with that being said, I also have not played Rise. So if I say something and you type in the comments, oh, that was in Rise, I did not play Rise. So please save your typing. So now, the gameplay, which will be filled with both pros and cons. So I've decided that the best way to talk about the gameplay will be to first talk about the good and everything that I found to be either an improvement or just simply enjoyed, and then I'll move on to the bad, which is definitely the bigger fucking list here, let me tell you. But in terms of good, simply put, the combat. I enjoyed just about everything about the combat, and I found just about every addition they made to all 14 of the weapon types to be good additions to their movesets, at least with all the weapons I tried, such as the hammer, the switch axe, the sword and shield, and the long blade. Like for example, you can now use your grappling hook while charging the hammer to avoid enemy attacks and to move around quicker without having to sacrifice your charge. And I found that these small additions help the gameplay to feel more fast-paced and constantly back and forth. And in a way, I almost felt like Wilds was the Bloodborne of the Monster Hunter games in that aspect. And just like basically every other Monster Hunter, all the weapons feel completely different, to the point where I would say that if you start getting bored and don't want to play a different game, then I would say to just switch weapons, because it almost feels like you're playing a different game entirely. Using a weapon like the hammer will feel completely different than using something more fast-paced like the sword and shield. I also enjoyed the new monster weak point system, and pretty much how this works is after you damage one part of a monster consistently, it'll then begin to glow red, like a giant weak spot in one of the Resident Evil games. And on PC, if you press shift while in the new focus mode, then you'll do something called a focus attack, which will then result in a powerful attack to the monster and additional loot drops from the monster as well. And like I said before, how this felt like the Bloodborne of Monster Hunter, this system only adds to that, allowing you to pull off some crazy high damage combos if you land a weak spot attack while in the middle of a regular attack chain. And while mentioning the new focus mode system, I will say that this was definitely one of my favorite new additions by far, and it allows you to essentially enter a almost over the shoulder type mode where you can precisely aim where you want to attack and control your camera. And to me personally, this felt like a huge improvement and made the combat feel way more tight and in control.
Tight, yeah!
Although, unfortunately, these two systems also lead to a problem, which of course will be mentioned in the bad section. I personally also found the Palicos to be way more helpful in this game, and having one of the widest array of abilities so far. Your Palico can cure you with status effects, give you full heals, basically prevent an entire cart transform to like a hot air balloon mode where they start shooting missiles at the monster.
Incoming!
And while they obviously don't do that much damage, in terms of versatility, I don't think Palicos have ever been more helpful, to the point where they're borderline OP. My only complaint with the Palicos is that you can no longer directly control them and tell them where to place traps or when to heal you, which in my opinion is a huge downgrade, but it's also counterbalanced by just how OP they are in general now, to the point where I'd rather have my Palico than a shitty teammate. Especially when my Palico looks like Poir, who's always just trying to do his best.
Hello war?
And one final minor compliment I want to give the game is just the music, because I personally really enjoyed some of the monster themes, and a lot of them really did help to amplify the current fight, and the music definitely stood out to me overall more than Worlds. Although I will say, I definitely found it to be a huge crime that I don't recall hearing the main Monster Hunter theme at any point. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but that shit is too much of a banger to sweep under the rug. Now, unfortunately, that's pretty much where the good stops, because I found just about everything else in this game to be a downgrade, with the two biggest things being the difficulty and the exploration, or just the hunting aspect in general. And what do I mean by that? Well, simply put, you no longer hunt jack shit in Monster Hunter, because Capcom has now decided that Monster Hunter needs to appeal to the ADHD brain riddled audience who doesn't have an attention span longer than 5 motherfucking minutes. Hence why this game has probably sold more copies than any other Monster Hunter, and the cost of that was essentially turning Monster Hunter into what essentially feels like an arcade machine where you insert quarters to continue playing. And ironically enough, despite this being the first open world Monster Hunter, probably has the least reasons to actually explore out of any other Monster Hunter. But do you remember how in Worlds, until you were actually familiar with a monster and have hunted it multiple times, you actually had to go around the world, look for footprints or other materials related to the monster, which would then help you track it, and this could sometimes take several minutes if it was a new monster you were hunting? Well, guess what? Not anymore. Now your hunter is omnipotent at all times and constantly knows where every monster is on the map 24/7. And with the addition of the new mountable secrets, you essentially just start a hunt, call your mount, and then it automatically, without you even needing to press a button, takes you straight to the monster. And because of this, I very rarely had any hunts that lasted more than 10 minutes. And even the hardest monsters in the game and the in-game tempered hunts never wound up taking me more than 15. With the biggest cost of this all being that you feel completely disconnected from the world around you. Because like I mentioned earlier, why the fuck would you actually take the time to explore anything other than when you need materials, when you can constantly just hop straight on your little dog and have it take you exactly where you need to be at all times? You need a material, mark it on the map and the mount takes you straight to it. You need to hunt a certain monster, mark it on the map and your dog takes you straight to it. It quite literally just feels like a normified arcade version of Monster Hunter. And I don't think I've ever felt less immersed with the world around me.
This sucks, man.
And another reason, like I mentioned before, that hunt's never going to take more than 10 minutes is because this is probably the easiest Monster Hunter I have ever played, to the point where it's borderline ridiculous. And there was not actually a single hunt in the entire game where I triple carded. In fact, there were very few hunts where I ever even carded once. And this is including the tempered and in-game hunts. So to anybody out there who's telling you, oh, the game's only easy during the main story, no the fuck it is not. It's easy throughout.
You're full of shit.
To the point where I could hunt tempered Arkvelts, the current hardest monster in the game, with ease. Jeez man, Worlds was definitely one of the easier monster hunters, but at least it presented a challenge to me, and there were multiple points during the story where I would at least have to stop and grind for gear, or reconsider my approach to something because there was a pretty big difficulty spike. Whereas Wilds just feels brain dead, and when you play with any more hunters, it just feels like abuse, and you and your friends can basically just stun lock the monster and it becomes Rockstar's newest Bully 2, where you just harass the poor beast and steal its fucking lunch money, and the monster barely even has a chance to fight back. I mean, it's almost comical how easy it is sometimes. And like I was saying earlier with the weak point system, while it definitely does improve the pace of the combat, it just adds to how easy it is, because using the weak point system, it just makes it all that much easier to stun lock the monster and knock them on their ass 3+ times in a row in less than a 2-minute time period. Luckily, I do think that out of all the things in this game, the difficulty is probably the easiest thing to improve, with either a few AI tweaks or just simply increasing the health or damage of the monsters, because I wouldn't consider myself a Monster Hunter pro by any means, and even I found this to be absurdly easy. I even went back and played a few hours of Worlds for reference, and you might say, oh well, Master Rank hunts are coming later. No, that is not a fucking excuse for there to be virtually no challenge at launch on a AAA game that I paid $70 for. Stop making excuses for these multi-million-dollar companies, especially for a franchise that's as long running as Monster Hunter, that's proven multiple times by now that it does know how to do difficulty. But that's the thing, they don't care about the fans anymore, because they would rather appeal to the more modern audience, and the more modern audience just wants to turn a game on for 10 minutes, do a couple runs like it's a fucking battle royale, and then hop off. Because like I said, even the tempered monsters, the ones that are supposed to be hard, the ones that are supposed to challenge you, can easily be harassed and bullied without you even needing to eat a meal, for fuck's sakes. But I challenge you to go back and just play a few hours of Worlds and then go play some Wilds, just so you can feel how noticeable the difference is. And in addition to my points about everything being more mainstream, you can't personalize your Palico skills or their gadgets anymore, in addition to, like how I said earlier, how you can't control when to use them, meaning that the only thing you can now customize about your Palico is their gear, such as their weapons and armor. Over half the mantles have been completely removed, and hunter tools such as the healing gas that I found extremely helpful in Worlds are completely absent, and I don't care if they're being planned to add later, because once again, they're not here now on the game that I spent $70 on. There's currently not even a fucking gathering hub, other than the main camp in each of the open world segments, but in terms of a general gathering hub for you and everyone else in the lobby to meet up at, no, that does not currently exist, despite being in basically all the previous games. And in addition to that, you also don't even have a room.
Spare change. Spare change, ma'am.
Squidward? Squidward, is that you?
Yeah, you remember that bedroom you had in Worlds that you could fully customize? Not anymore, that shit is gone. Which also means that you don't even have anywhere to display captured wildlife or fish that you caught. Which, while personally I couldn't give a fuck less about that, I do know that that is something a lot of other Monster Hunter players value. And while this is way smaller, it is still something that's been removed. You can no longer customize Poogie the Pig's outfit. And way more important than that, optional quests in general have basically been fucking neutered, and that is, in my opinion, one of the things that adds to the content drought. But optional quests are almost non-existent. In Worlds, there were pages of optional quests divided by difficulty, whereas in this, you have, I shit you not, basically 1 to 2 pages of bullshit to scroll through, of completely non-unique optional quests, half of which you don't even have from the get-go, and you have to get from talking to other characters, meaning that once you do finish the main story and get your hunter rank to an appropriate level, you basically have nothing left to do. You farm Arkvelt to get the last armor set in the game at the moment, and then you go to your quest and realize, oh, I've basically done all the optional quests already, meaning that all you can even do at that point is just farm tempered hunts. And of course, the neutering of optional quests also means the removal of basically any secret quests that would unlock you additional mantles, gadgets, or Palico equipment. I mean, I have never struggled this hard in a Monster Hunter game to find something to do in the end game, because this game basically hands you everything you need from the get-go, and you basically get everything you need just from playing through the story, that again, once you farm the Arkvelt armor set, you might as well just uninstall the game and wait for content updates. And one of the most sinister parts about this is that multiple monsters have already been found in the game files to be drip fed to us later as content content updates. Because Capcom, instead of releasing a full game from the get-go with all these monsters already included and then making new content to drip feed us, they would rather release a half-finished game that you paid full price for from the get-go and then slowly release this shit over the next coming months until they eventually ask you to spend $40 more on an expansion.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Like I'm sure many of you have also heard, the PC optimization is dog fucking shit. Dog shit. I cannot emphasize that to you enough, and I'm pretty sure most people agree that the reason for this is because Capcom decided to use the Resident Evil engine, an engine that is mainly used for linear horror games, to make a open world game where up to 7 monsters can be on the map at once, which then results in you getting a game that looks worse than Worlds in virtually every aspect except for certain textures, not including ray tracing, with colors that basically only consist of different shades of brown like the game's fucking character cast, that essentially depends on upscaling to get any sort of decent performance for less than half the frames you would get on Worlds on all ultra settings with no upscaling required. Because surprise surprise, Worlds wasn't made on a dog shit engine. And even if they fix it later, again, that doesn't excuse Capcom for making yet another shit PC port on launch. And I don't know how many of you have played Dragon's Dogma 2, but we're still waiting on PC improvements for that game. So I wouldn't even hold your breath. So unless you have like a top of the line PC, expect to depend on upscaling to again get any decent performance, and also expect your game to look pretty fucking muddied. And the last thing I want to talk about regarding the gameplay, which I know was an issue for the game because I played through a very large portion of this game while talking to my friends on Discord and never had any connection problems while talking to them on there. But I cannot tell you how many fucking times I lost connection to this game's shitty ass dog ass fucking servers. I could barely go more than 3 hunts without getting disconnected and then having to crawl my ass back to fucking mutilated Mia Khalifa to then rejoin the fucking lobby because somehow in the year 2025 we can't launch a fucking AAA game with stable servers. Again, I don't give a fuck if you fix it later when you released in this state, and it made trying to play with my friends and viewers a ass experience. And speaking of ass experience, the multiplayer experience in general is fucking shit, and it's something you would have expected out of a game from a goddamn decade ago. Japan, I don't know how you're such a fucking technologically advanced culture, but your multiplayer in gaming is like you're from a Fallout level civilization. But you have to go through like 4 different fucking steps just to add somebody, then invite them to your link squad, then finally get them in a hunt, and after dealing with that for 5 minutes for almost every fucking hunt, you'll probably get disconnected and then have to redo it all over again. But needless to say, I would not consider Wilds a smooth launch by any means, nor do I think on a content level the game is at a good place at launch either. Because like I said, you essentially have a 10 to 15 hour story, and then you're back to shoveling shit for a few hours trying to get the gear set that you want, only to then be staring at this big open world going, what do I do now?
Now what?
I don't know, I guess fish for the next several months until they finally give us some content. And just know that this doesn't come out of a place for hate. I've already had several comments trying to tell me that I'm just a negative clickbait content channel or whatever, but no, I am a review channel. I spend my own hard-earned money on these games and then I play them and then I give you my opinion on them. That is it. I have positive reviews on this channel and I have negative reviews on this channel. In fact, I have about an equal amount of both. And the reason I say that is because I do like Monster Hunter. I am a Monster Hunter fan, and Capcom is actually one of the few companies left that I think it still makes pretty consistently fun games. So what I'm saying comes from a place of caring and wanting to see improvement because if Capcom keeps releasing their games like this, then I'm going to have to add them to my long list of developers that are not to be trusted. And if I'm to be honest, they're kind of already on there, but at least like I said, I'm willing to give them a slightly more benefit of the doubt since they make fun games. So with that rant over, I would like to move on to one final rant, and that is just simply about the way Capcom handles the Monster Hunter games in general and why I think people need to stop giving them a free pass. But while I was ranting to some of my friends about how content dry this game felt, and how I feel like it's such a scummy practice to essentially release a half-finished game to then force you to wait for the expansion to finally put the game where it should have been to begin with, they made sure to inform me that that's basically always been the norm for Monster Hunter, and that, you know, even back before the time of DLC, they would simply re-release the game with an expansion to again put it back where it needs to be.
If I ever find one of these lying around again, I swear to fucking God, I will stop being so polite. Get the fuck out of my sight before I demolish you.
And I'm sorry, but I don't care if they've been doing this for the past 30 years. That is fucking scummy. That is fucking greedy. Especially when you add that in compound to the fact that they're asking me for $5 to $10 just to re-customize my fucking character or my Palico because maybe I made a mistake when customizing them, or maybe later down the road I just decided I wanted to redesign them. But no, they give you one free customization ticket, and then after that you either have to make a new character and restart the game, or cough up some fucking fun bucks to Snozcom for some customization tickets. And I'm sorry, but no, I'm not gonna give these greedy fucks a free pass for that. This whole practice is some of the scummiest shit I've seen in the gaming industry. At the end of the day, Capcom is asking you for $70 for what you should assume is a full game. But no, what you're telling me is that essentially every Monster Hunter title is gonna cost me anywhere from about $120 to $140 just to get a complete game, since you essentially have to pay for it twice. No, we as players should expect better, and if you ever want to see improvement in anything, you have to be vocal about it. No matter how many fucking brain dead retards might just say you're complaining and that you should be grateful to a multi-million-dollar industry, because what you as the player should expect is a mutual transaction. You give them $70 and in return you get a full and complete game, which may then later get a big content update where you may have to pay more. That's how it should go. Not you pay $70, get a fucking quarter of a game, and then you have to cough up an additional $70 just to get it where it should have been at launch. So fuck Capcom for this greedy ass practice, fuck anyone defending it, and please speak out. Because again, while I don't have a problem with the expansions themselves, I do have a problem with you giving me a half-baked fucking game and then expecting me to pay extra to fix it. And now with that out of the way, it's time for our final rating. So like I probably made it abundantly clear, Wilds in particular wound up being a really big disappointment to me, and I was honestly hoping that this would be a positive review overall. But unfortunately, I still have something called integrity, so I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you to go out and cough up your fun bucks for an unfinished fucking product, which is exactly what this is. You're given a 10 to 15 hour boring ass story that you're probably not gonna give half a fuck about and are gonna rush through to get to the actual content you want to play, only to then find out that there barely is any content, and there's actually even one less monster than there was in Worlds. You don't even get more monsters, you actually get one less. A new open world that ultimately means jack shit and gives you zero reason to explore it, other than the occasional need for supplies like you would in any other Monster Hunter, and a downgrade in virtually every other aspect outside of the combat, which even then has its own problems due to the game's horrendously easy difficulty. difficulty. My final score for Monster Hunter Wilds in its current state is a 6 out of 10. But like I was saying, while this game could eventually even become maybe a 9 out of 10, that doesn't change the fact that it launched as a 6. And would I recommend it? No. Definitely not in its current state. I would recommend that you either wait for a good half off sale or at least 25% off. Or if you don't mind waiting longer, then fuck man, I would just say wait till the expansion comes out and then buy them both at the same time. Because really, that's probably when the game's gonna be where it should have been at launch. So thank you guys for watching, and if you enjoyed the review, please leave a like and a sub, as I will keep the reviews coming. And the last thing I would like to do is give a quick shout out to this channel's members and Poirlights. So thank you Mr. L3, Latina Parfait, Wiggly, Betamax, Thoth Phoenix, Leaf, 10-Foot Faces, Jimmy Johnson, Pogro, Fredo, Mega Sneed, Sebastian Howard, Xbox Huge, Sneed Feed, Stony41, Elias, Alex vs. Evil, The Hairline God, Zero R2, Arind, What the Egad, Hollow, Honky Kong, WizDivision Productions, Retardicus 2, GameSense, Mega Rock'n'Rolla, Dr. Quaalude, and McLovin. Your guys' support means a lot, and I'll see you guys next time.
Get what you fucking deserve!